Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel and today let's do a little recap of Matchday 2 of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, yes, I know Matchday 3 has already begun and we're gonna touch on that at the end of the video, but for this video I want to talk mostly about the matches that happened on Matchday 2 because some of them were absolutely crazy. So with that said, let's get into it. Starting with Czechia 1, South Africa 1. Now, as you can see from the scoreline, Czechia takes a very early lead with a goal from Sadilek at 6 minutes, and it was a long fight all throughout the match. Unfortunately, Mokoena is suspended for the next match because he got a second yellow card in this one, but he does save South Africa. You can call it a last gasp, if you will. He takes a penalty at the 83rd minute and he scores it. Now, people have been obviously debating, was that a penalty? Was that a handball? And Schultz himself, who was the one who committed the handball, he didn't complain, so honestly, that's good enough for me. Now, throughout the match, neither side was particularly able to create big chances, but South Africa was a bit more offensive in the second half, and both teams will have to win their next games to have a chance to qualify third place. Otherwise, both of them are out. And of course, as of releasing this video, we know who succeeded in that and who didn't. But that is Czechia 1, South Africa 1. In the next game, we had Mexico 1, South Korea 0. And the 1 came from a singular goal off of Romo, who capitalized off of a mistake from the South Korean goalkeeper, who, when he saw that happen, he was just like head in his hands. He was just like, stomping on the ground and stuff like that. The goalkeeper, that is. Korea will feel hard done by, certainly, but overall they just have difficulty scoring. A lot of close calls, a lot of missed chances. And for the next match, they can actually relax rather versus Czechia, maybe even start Memo Ochoa, and we'll get to that again. Whereas South Korea ideally would want to beat South Africa if they want to advance to the knockout rounds, but of course a draw is good enough, even a loss is good enough. But we'll have to see what happens there. Next up, we have Switzerland 4, Bosnia and Herzegovina 1. God, I think the main takeaway from this, if you look at the goals, Murat Yakin really needs to start Mamzambi, and they need to start Ruben Vargas as well. In the match, they didn't start the two of them, and Switzerland did less than nothing in the first 70 minutes, but Manzambi and Ruben Vargas came on, and you can see here they made immediate impacts. 74th minute goal from Manzambi, 84th minute goal from Vargas, and Bosnia fought hard, but ultimately I think they just started to run out of steam, frankly, but they did still get a goal. They got an absolute banger goal from Mahmic, and you can see it's in 93rd minute. Pajaka got a penalty in the 97th minute, and you're left wondering, where was this Switzerland against Qatar, right? But going back to Bosnia for a sec, they can still qualify for the round 32 if they beat Qatar, whereas Switzerland would have to beat Canada, not just draw. They would have to beat Canada to top the group, and we'll see whether that happens or not. Next up, we had Canada 6, Qatar 0. Looking at the scoreline, I think this was a performance that was expected of Switzerland. In this match, Ismail Okone was injured, and I think he broke his tibia or something like that, which is a huge shame. He is probably out for several weeks, I think, from what I've read, and probably just the rest of the World Cup. But Saliba could be a good replacement. You can see here, he actually scored in this game against Qatar, and after he did, he actually went to the side, took Ismail Kone's jersey, and just held it up towards the camera, held it up towards the crowd, and so he could be good against other opponents for Canada. Jonathan David, oh my god, he really showed up here. You can see 3 goals from him, a Jonathan David hat trick, and let's hope that he keeps that performance for Canada. In this game, on the Qatar side, Akram Afif has been mid at best. But going back to Canada, though, if they can draw the game against Switzerland, they would be playing their home games in Vancouver at BC Place. So let's see whether that happens, or they can do that for round 32 and maybe even the round of 16. Moving on to the next game day, we had USA 2, Australia 0. Now, I think this result is almost single-handedly down to Popovich's weird starting lineup. If we look at the lineup, you can see they started Motori, they started Okan Engstler. Some of these players I've never even heard of, but it's a really questionable choice that they didn't start Irankunda or Metcalf, who scored in the games prior. But otherwise, this was just another really dominant performance from the US. You can see over here, Australia started getting some momentum in the second half, but it was a little too late. They weren't really able to score any goals, really. But I will say it's interesting that that's 2 games now for the US that they've had own goals from the other side. In the game against Paraguay, it was I can't remember his name anymore, but in that game they had an own goal to start off the U.S.'s scoring, and then in this game you had Burgess score for the U.S. So I wonder what's that about. Maybe it's like intimidation or something like that, and let's see whether that happens with Turkey or not. So yeah, that's about it for this game. For Australia, they will be playing Paraguay, and ideally I think they would just want to draw the match so both of them can advance to the knockouts, but we'll see what happens. We saw what happened to Korea. I'll get to that when we get there, but for now, this is another decisive victory for the US, who fought off an Australia that managed to win 2-0 against Turkey, and now they are going to be facing Turkey. Speaking of Turkey, we had Paraguay 1, Turkey 0. Now, we had a very early goal, but looking more generally, Turkey's performance may just be the biggest disappointment of the entire tournament. 2 losses, and that is probably soon to be 3, and they're already eliminated on match day 2 without even having kicked a ball against the United States. So I think this has got to be a massive disservice and a massive letdown for the very, very passionate Turkish fans. 60-something shots across 2 games, 0 goals. Not much to say about Paraguay here. They fought well to maintain their early lead, but I will say the red card for Almiron may have just generated the vocal stim of the entire tournament. The referee coming out and practically yelling at Almiron about covering his mouth. Decision is the red card. It's just a brilliant video. Just go check it out. But more generally on the rule about that red card, I do think it is a fair one to have, so long as it's applied equally. So, if there was another incident like this. I think it was England versus Ghana where that also kind of happened. I think it was like Jude Bellingham who covered his mouth, but that wasn't penalized for any reason, and I don't really understand it. But this has got to be a very disappointing result for Turkey. You can see here they had all of the momentum practically, other than the 1 goal at the start from Paraguay. They had all of the momentum, but they couldn't generate any goals out of it. 2.17 xG and no goals to show for it. I think this cannot be described as anything other than a disappointment. Next, we had Morocco 1, Scotland 0. I'm honestly pleasantly surprised that Scotland kept the score low, and this is coming from a Scotland fan. I do think some of the starting lineup choices were, questionable, especially not starting Ben Doak. When he came on, the offense immediately became a lot more potent, although it was too little too late. McTominay was also kind of quiet, and honestly, if Scotland hadn't conceded that goal from Saibari, right at the start there, I could see this dragging out to a 0-0, and It gives me hope for the game against Brazil, where it will effectively be Operation Don't Get Battered, right? I don't think Scotland can win against Brazil, but, lose with minimal concessions and pray that the goal difference gods are on our side. And more importantly, get Shanklin involved. He was great against Bolivia. Why wasn't he played at all against Morocco? And for Morocco, this is probably a disappointing performance, and they would have wanted to score another goal or two. And I think this is where the absence of Ezazuli really shows, although Buwadi was pretty good, if you ask me. After that, we had Brazil 3-0 Haiti. Now, I didn't watch this, but looking at the scoreline, I trust that Haiti put up a really good fight for Brazil to not even score a single goal in the majority of the second half. This was a good day for Mateus Cunha, of course, Vinny Jr. doing well, but there is a bit of a disconnect between the midfield and the attack. If Vinny shines against Scotland, then they can win in a convincing fashion. Otherwise, it could be a 1-0 victory, or even a 0-0 or 1-1, who knows, but again, I don't think Scotland can beat Brazil. Haiti, though, they can keep their heads up high knowing that they put up a good fight against some of the best teams in the world. This was ultimately always going to be a challenging group for Haiti to get out of, and hopefully their successes can carry on to the next Gold Cup. On the next game day, we start with Netherlands 5, Sweden 1. This might be the first time a team has won by 4 goals and then lost by 4 goals. An absolutely ludicrous result, but certainly it shows that while the Swedish attack can create chances, their defense is ultimately very leaky, and a top European sides like the Netherlands can certainly do some damage. Now, I wonder what Netherlands versus Tunisia will look like, but for this game, Brian Brobby, that is a bit of a tongue twister if you ask me. Brian Brobby really shone in this game, but I did see one clip where Ilanga had an insane play where he slots the ball between a defender's legs. It was in the corner of the pitch, and then he makes a pass into the box, which ultimately didn't result in anything. But that play was insane, and also, I thought Gyökeres was kind of quiet in this game as well. Ultimately, they did generate a few chances, but, they weren't able to capitalize on them. But yeah, a very resounding result for the Netherlands going into their last match against Tunisia. In the same group, we had Japan 4, Tunisia 0. Yikes. Even Hervé Renard wasn't able to save this god-awful Tunisian side, but in fairness, I never thought he'd be able to anyway, in the sense that I view these last 2 games in the same way that Graham Potter viewed the last few qualifier matches. Just play how the previous coach played, find the mistakes and errors, and rebuild over the next few months, and hopefully come up with something better for the next competitive matches, in this case for Tunisia, probably AFCON qualifiers. So, although I did see a rumor that Hervé Renard only signed for the World Cup matches and will decide afterwards whether he wants to continue, which is not looking super likely at the moment, considering how loudly he was shouting during the match with Japan. Regardless, this has got to be the most disappointing African side this year. At least South Africa showed some fight against Czechia. And I don't have much to say on Japan, but, clearly their injuries of, Mitoma and stuff like that, they aren't really holding them back too much for the time being, at the very least. After that, we had Germany 2, Ivory Coast 1. Oh, Adingra. This is what happens when you're too cautious of the ball and too respectful of the opponent. You get punished for it. To be fair, even a draw would have locked Germany for first place probably, but the Ivorians could have pushed for another goal when it was 1-1. Instead, it was Germany's hero du jour, Dennis Undav, who saves the day for them, taking 6 points out of 6 so far, and they look set to take 9 later on as well. Maybe Nagelsmann can start Undav, but come on, don't hold your breath. By the way, if you're wondering why someone by the name of Dennis Undav is playing for Germany and not Turkey, well, he's Kurdish, so there you go. Back to Ivory Coast, though, I thought Christolai was good, and credit where it's due for Frank Cassier for finishing the shot against Neuer. Seems like Singo might be injured for the next game, which will be a big miss, but also, it's Curacao, and I feel like, okay, Singo-less Cote d'Ivoire can still handle them pretty easily. Speaking of injuries, though, it looks like Schlotterbeck is out for Germany for a few weeks, which is definitely going to be felt in the team going forward. And then for the last match of this game day, we had Ecuador 0, Curacao 0. This was interesting. I didn't watch the match because I expected Ecuador to pull through, but they didn't. Instead, it was the Curaçaoan goalkeeper Eloy Rome, that's how you pronounce it by the way, it's not Room, it's Rome, who came through and made huge saves for Curaçao to give them their first ever point at a World Cup. Someone did note an interesting defense strategy from Curaçao, where instead of huddling around the box, they actually clear away so that the goalkeeper can see the shot and see the attacker coming, and they can make the save accordingly. It works against Ender Valencia, but it probably wouldn't work against someone like Amad Diallo. But, getting a first point at their first ever World Cup is already a massive win, so props to them, and I hope they just enjoy their last game with Ivory Coast, whatever the result may be. As for Ecuador, this has got to be one of their biggest failures at the World Cup, maybe the biggest failure. We already talked about Ender Valencia, but I'm told that Ngapié was also being dribbled past by the Curaçaoan attackers, which is kind of crazy. And now they have to face Germany, and if they can't so much as get a draw, they're grouped. There's virtually zero chance of a country getting through on 2 points in third place. On the next game day, we had Spain 4, Saudi Arabia 0. It looks like Spain finally found their shooting boots, aka starting Lamine Yamal, who bags his first goal in 10 minutes. And then Oyarzabal, Mr. couldn't touch the ball for 30 minutes Oyarzabal, gets a brace in the first half. Yeah, what else can you say, really? The draw with Cape Verde really, I think, woke them up, or at the very least, it woke up Luis de la Fuente. If you've got Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams firing on all cylinders, it's going to be very hard for any team to defend against, much less a Saudi Arabia that has effectively used up its free trial of good games at the World Cup. For the other game in this group, we had Uruguay 2, Cape Verde 2. I think my biggest takeaway from this game is that Vozinha did not carry the Cape Verdean defense in the Spain match. Everyone's talking about his heroics in that match, but like I said in my dedicated video about the match, link in the description, he made some relatively easy saves, and that was down to the airtight defense that they had in that game from the likes of Pico Lopez. For this game, Bobista was able to play a bit more openly, knowing that Uruguay didn't have the firepower that Spain did, and that was ultimately what caused Cape Verde to concede 2 goals. Were they savable? Yes, but ultimately the defense was just a bit looser than it was versus Spain. The first Uruguayan goal, it comes off of a rebound after a Vozinha save, and absolutely no one was marking Maxi Araujo. Likewise, the second goal at the end of the first half, Canobio just kind of outruns the Cape Verdean defenders, which is the cost of playing a bit more openly. But one thing that Cape Verde showed here is the resilience and the ability to come back from behind. That first goal, by the way, what a way to score your country's first ever goal. A free kick for Kevin Lalini from 35 yards out or whatever, and the Uruguayan wall just opens as if it was Moses parting the Red Sea, for those of us who remember it. But it's still an impressive shot that Muslera couldn't save. And speaking of Muslera, between the two goalkeepers, he was definitely the one having a disaster class, not Vozinha. You can see here 4.6 rating on FOTMOB. Again, Vozinha isn't perfect. He's not prime Neuer, and all things considered, he didn't really make any mistakes that directly contributed to the goal. Muslera did. Why the hell was he running outside of the box on a risky touch when he could have just stayed in and probably saved the shot from Helio Varela? If he hadn't made the mistake, the conversation could have been very different. We could have been looking at Uruguay winning 3-1 or something. But this is, again, an indictment on the questionable choices being made by Bielsa, and I think Uruguayans definitely feel disappointed about this result. Although even on the Cape Verdean side, some better choices could have been made. For me personally, maybe Bobista can consider starting Livramento against Saudi Arabia, since Benchimol is just not cutting it for me at the moment. And heck, look at this. Livramento didn't even play at all in this game, which is just insane if you ask me. But going back to Uruguay, heck, they may have just been grouped entirely, since next they have to go up against Spain, and Cape Verde just needs to face a down bad Saudi Arabia that got destroyed by Spain. If Cape Verde wins and Spain wins, we are looking at Cape Verde qualifying in second place, and Uruguay getting grouped. Could you imagine telling that to someone even just a month ago? It's a lovely story for Cape Verde and a massive disappointment and embarrassment for Uruguay. Moving on to Group G, we had Belgium 0, Iran 0. Yeah, Belgium is on serious fraud watch with this one. 2 games, 180 minutes, and not a single Belgian player has scored a goal, since, remember, the Belgian equalizer against Egypt was an own goal by Hani. I watched the second half of this, and in the space of about 10 minutes, I shouted, "Do something!" at the Belgian squad 3 times. There is a serious lack of finishing ability from the Belgians right now, and if they can't beat New Zealand, they could be at serious risk of being grouped entirely. And Ngoy is suspended for the next match as well due to a red card, which surely isn't great. Although there were some funny moments in the match, like when a goal got ruled offside because someone's ass was too fat or something. Man of the match, though, has got to be the Iranian goalkeeper Bayranvand. Some really good saves that came from him here, which ensured a goalless draw between these two sides. After that, we have Egypt 3, New Zealand 1. Now, I didn't watch this, but my understanding is that New Zealand is just not super solid in their defense, even though they go forward quite well. You saw some of the stars for Egypt really shy. New Zealand opened the scoring with Sermon, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but Zico got the first goal for Egypt with a strong header that touched the fingertips of the goalkeeper, and then Mo Salah gets his first ever goal at the World Cup, and later he puts in an assist for Trezeguet as well, and what a way to get your first ever World Cup win. It basically locks Egypt for the knockouts as well, being on 4 points. Can they make it 7? We'll wait and see. But for New Zealand, they're going to have to go up against Belgium. But this Belgium side is really not in good shape right now, so who knows what could happen there, right? Moving on to the next game day, we start with Argentina 2, Austria 0. I mean, it's just a messy show, isn't it? All things considered, I think Austria did well to keep the score low, and it would have been a narrow 1-0 win if Messi didn't put that one in at the end. You know, people talk about the missed penalty, but I think he maybe didn't want his record-breaking goal to be a penalty or something like that. Who knows for sure. I don't really have much to say about Austria. Again, you're playing Argentina, one of the firm favorites to win the whole damn tournament. A 2-0 loss is honestly a respectable result. Can you tell you that I didn't watch the match? After that, we had Algeria 2, Jordan 1. Yeah, I didn't watch this one either. I've not got much to say about it, except that this result officially eliminates Jordan, and Algeria would have to beat Austria to get into second place in the group, and to get revenge for the disgrace of Gijón. You can look it up. Gijón is spelled Gijon. Although, now that we have a better picture of the knockout paths, they might not want to beat Austria, considering second place in this group. They'll most likely play Spain in the round of 32. But let's see what happens, and let's see what Petkovic has planned for this Algerian side. Meanwhile, in the other group, we had probably the longest game that we've had at this World Cup. France 3, Iraq 0. There were 2 whole hours where people were just waiting for the lightning to go away, and ultimately this isn't much of a game from which you can really draw major conclusions anyway. It's France playing against by far the weakest team in the group. I will say that Dembele really showed up in this game with an assist for Mbappe, and also a goal of his own later on, but he was, relatively quiet against Senegal, but that's really all there is to this game, I think. Iraq did their best, but I think Ayman Hussein was injured as well, so their game against Senegal won't be fun. But for France, they just need to get a draw against Norway, and they are comfortably top of this group. On to the other game in this group, we had Norway 3, Senegal 2. Now, this is a match that I absolutely did watch the full 90 minutes of, and for starters, that scoreline massively flatters Senegal. Going into the game, I supported both teams really, and I didn't want the scoreline to be too much of a blowout on either side, but man, this easily could have been a 5-1 or 5-2 for Norway. Senegal generated chances going forward, sure, but their backline was absolutely abysmal, and this is against the Norwegian side whose own defense isn't great either. Norway was just generating so many chances, and if they could put away a few more of those clear chances and not wait until Senegal stuffs their box with their own players, then this could have easily gone like 5-2 or something for Norway. The second point I want to make is that this was a Koulibaly disaster class. The first goal from Pedersen, that was off of a poor clearance from Koulibaly. The second goal and the first one for Holland, you can very clearly see Koulibaly just trying to catch up to Holland but just fall over. You can't be doing that at high-level international football, but at the same time, the Norwegian defense has got to get tighter. They can't just let Ismail Assar just run through the wall like that. But man, oh man, Erling Braut Haaland. Or should I say, Erling Braut Haaland. Ugly or beautiful, easy or difficult, he just scores and scores and scores. His second goal, weak foot, hits the post just hard enough that it bounces in and misses the keeper. Gosh, there was an open goal as well that he hit the post on, and there was also a header that would have gone in if he hadn't aimed so low. He could have bagged 4 goals in this game alone. This guy is not messing around, and I expect him to do some damage against France. But the problem is, because of this last-minute goal from Ismail Assar, the goal difference means that Norway would have to beat France to top the group, whereas they would have topped it with a draw if they had beaten Senegal 3-1. Still, 3 points is 3 points, and the fact that we're talking about trying to get first in the group instead of worrying about whether Norway are even going to qualify for the knockouts at all is a success in itself. And you know what's fun? The most likely opponent for the winner of Group I is Sweden. Could you imagine Norway versus Sweden at the World Cup? And Norway would win again, just like they did in a pre-tournament friendly. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. France is a very formidable opponent and will cause a lot of problems for the very leaky Norwegian defense. I think Ryerson is out for this game as well, which sucks. Pedersen is okay going forward, but not super useful in defending. We'll see how things go, but at this point in time, I'm still favoring France to win that game. On to the next game day, and we start with Portugal 5, Uzbekistan 0. Firstly, I don't think we should be too harsh on Uzbekistan. After all, it's their first World Cup, and people have pointed out that even the Asian powerhouses of today, like Japan, like South Korea, they had terrible debuts at the World Cup as well. On some level, it's about having the experience on the world's biggest stage for future generations of Uzbek footballers to build upon. For Portugal, I don't want to hear people arguing that CR7 is still the GOAT somehow. Good job. You scored against Uzbekistan, with respect. Whereas Messi has put 5 past Algeria and Austria, which are better teams. I'm sorry, this is not a debate. But I do like the idea of CR7 pretending to take a free kick and then giving it to someone else like Nuno Mensch, just leaning into the whole Homelander gimmick, if that makes sense. The next game for them is going to be Colombia, which is going to be their biggest challenge in the group for sure. If they win, they top the group. If Colombia even so much as draws, they top the group. But we'll just have to see how things pan out. After that, we have Colombia 1, DR Congo 0. Now, I didn't watch this because it was at 10 a.m. my time and I was fast asleep, but based on my understanding from watching other people's summaries of the game, this scoreline really flatters DR Congo, actually. Apparently, there were several big chances for Colombia, including, I think, 2 goals marked offside and then 1 goal not counted because of a foul in the build-up, but this was a dominant performance from Colombia. Luis Diaz really showing up for the national team after a good season at Bayern, but on the other side as well, Lionel Mpasi also made some really good saves for Congo to keep the scoreline respectable. I've already talked about Colombia's next game, so let's go into DR Congo's next game, which is, of course, against Uzbekistan. If they can win that, get a scrappy 2-0 or 2-1, something like that, then DR Congo actually stands a pretty good chance of qualifying, since then they'll be on 4 points, which virtually guarantees qualification. And finally, in Group L, we start with a shock result. England 0, Ghana 0. England, who had just resoundingly defeated the recent World Cup finalist Croatia, is held to a frustrating goalless draw versus Ghana. And this is prime Queiroz ball in action. In case you didn't know, Carlos Queiroz is the current Ghanaian manager. He's Portuguese actually, and he is known for playing an extremely defensive style of football. And he played it to perfection in this game. I mean, the stats don't lie. 0 shots on target for England in the first half. It's only in the second half that they generate a few more chances. Harry Kane misses an easy shot, and the match ends with England dropping points. They should still top the group, with Panama coming up, but their confidence has certainly taken a hit. Maybe it's not quite coming home just yet. I didn't watch the match, but frankly, maybe that was a good thing, judging by how many people on Twitter found it not enjoyable to watch whatsoever. And for our final match of Matchday 2, we had Croatia 1, Panama 0. This was a very ugly game for Croatia, with only 1 goal despite 1.65 xG. Reportedly, there were even points where Panama looks like the better team. There was one instance where Pasalic managed to mess up a 1v1 with the keeper. Now they were on 3 points, having lost to England earlier, of course, and if they draw with Ghana, they're most likely going to qualify in 3rd, I think, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. Re-report, you decide. But in all seriousness, Dallas really needs to freshen up this side if they want to make a run as deep as the last one they made. And we wait and see whether that's actually going to happen. Now, like I mentioned at the start of the video, Matchday 3 for the World Cup 2026 has already begun, so I thought while I'm here, I might as well give you my little summary of the matches that have already happened on Matchday 3. Although I won't be covering the matches that are currently going on, which you can see here, Japan versus Sweden, Tunisia versus Netherlands. I won't be covering those because who knows what will happen by the end of them. You know, you might get a shock winner from one of these sides. Heck, Sweden might score against Japan or something like that. So I'm not going to cover those 2 matches, but I will cover every single other match that has already happened, and there's still a lot to be covered, so let's get right into it. And we start Matchday 3 with Bosnia and Herzegovina 3, Qatar 1. Now, I didn't watch the match. I was ironically busy writing down notes for my previous matches in Matchday 2 that I just covered, but this is a resounding win for Bosnia, which all but guarantees a spot for them in the knockout round for the first time in their history. There were points in the game where Qatar looked threatening, and it seemed like Akramafi finally woke up and his shots hit the goalpost a few times, but ultimately Bosnia see the game through with a ridiculous screamer from outside of the box for Alibegovic, which, by the way, I just learned that Alibegovic is now the new youngest player to score from outside the box, beating the record that was set by Mbappe of all players. Near the end, the sub Mahmic puts in another goal for his 2nd game in a row now, add an own goal to that, and you know, you can call it an own goal, but really if you watch the replay, Edin Dzeko actually puts in the cross or puts in a shot. It deflects off of Albrake, if I remember correctly. Albonada, the goalkeeper, tries to save it, but he ends up just batting it into his own net, and so officially it's counted as an Albonada own goal. But yeah, 3 shots, that's the game. Qatar is eliminated, although it does seem like they put in more of a fight this time than they did last World Cup. Looking at the bracket, Bosnia's most likely opponent is the US, which might not be too fun of a game, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Happening at the same time in the same group, we had Switzerland 2, Canada 1, with Switzerland defeating Canada to officially top the group. Now, the general sense is just that Canada did not fire up early enough. They had one goal in the 76th minute, but it was too little too late and they couldn't find an equalizer. But for Switzerland, to his credit, Murat Yakin did actually start Manzambi and Ruben Vargas this time. You can see right here, Manzambi and Ruben Vargas over here. And look who scored for Switzerland, right? Promised David nails them back, like I mentioned earlier, but they couldn't find an equalizer, and that's the game. Canada will be disappointed at this because this means that Canada will be the only host country to have to play outside of their country for their round of 32 match. And as of me writing those notes, the most likely matchup was going to be against South Korea, which would be bad because the match would be held in LA, which has a huge Korean diaspora. So this would be effectively a Korean home game. But as we'll find out later, that's not actually the case. They kind of dodged a bullet, if you will, but I will talk about the knockout bracket later. But it is what it is. Canada lose this game at home against Switzerland, and Switzerland tops the group, while Canada qualifies in second place in Group B. Then we move to Group C and start with Morocco for Haiti 2. Now you can see here there were 2 late game winners for Morocco, which will yield them another 3 points in this group. The first Haitian goal, I can see why they counted it as a Bunu own goal, since it probably wouldn't have gone in if Lenny Joseph didn't slam it into his body, but in our hearts it will always be a Lenny Joseph goal. The second Haitian goal, though, was such a screamer from Isidore that even the Moroccan fans watching were like, damn. And I think his performance across this World Cup campaign overall solidifies Isidore's position in the Haitian squad going into future tournaments like the World Cup, which is good. God knows Haiti needed a proper striker. As for Morocco, not really much to take away from a game where you're playing the weakest team in the group. At least Saibari gets his third goal in 3 games, which is impressive in my book. Moving on to the other game in Group C, we had Brazil 3, Scotland 0. Now, if you follow the channel, you'll know that just over 24 hours ago, as of recording this, I actually did a watch-along stream for this game. I was originally going to record this video yesterday, but I took too long writing the notes for the games of Matchday 2, and by the time I was finished, this game was about to start, and I thought, hey, let's start a watch-along stream. I'm a Scotland fan, and let's just say the stream didn't go too well. By the time Cunha put in the 3rd goal for Brazil, I just decided, screw this, I'm going to stop watching, I'm going to go take a shower and go to bed. And yeah, I think it's safe to say that Operation Don't Get Battered was a clear and abject failure. In a way, I kind of always expected that Scotland would get a reality check at the World Cup, that we don't deserve to be there based on skill level. It's like with Turkey, a big, passionate fan base with none of the collective talent to show for it. I'm surprised it took until Brazil for that reality check to set in, but when you've got a guy like Vinny Jr. on the other side, there is no margin for error. But like with Lucas Zidane in the Argentina game, I don't think all of the blame can go to Angus Gunn. It's ultimately the back line, a disaster class from the likes of Scott McKenna and Jack Hendry, which really gave away clear chances for Vinny Jr. And, like I mentioned earlier, when Cunha put in the goal, the 3rd goal, I just stopped watching the game. Scotland didn't concede any more from that point on, but a -3 goal difference on 3 points is very bad and will require several things to go a very specific way for Scotland to scrape through to the knockouts. Can I say I'm disappointed? Sure, but it's more that Scotland is finally showing their true level under normal Steve Clarke operation. If anything, the 1-0 loss to Morocco was probably an overperformance, and I say this from having followed the Scottish national team for a few years now. Lewis Ferguson was good for what it's worth. I think he made a few goal line clearances. Benjamin Doak is kind of like the Scottish Esmir Bajraktarovic in that he's got legs for days, but he lacks that finishing ability in that final third, except Bajraktarovic probably has a bit better of a finishing ability. But I do look forward to seeing, Ben Doak at a better level in future competitions, but this was probably too early for him, I thought. McTominay was kind of invisible, other than that one weak-ass header off of a set piece that Alisson saved with ease. McLean didn't do much. Shanklin tried a few things, but ultimately didn't get anywhere. Yeah, let's move on. All things considered, I don't really think Scotland deserves to qualify for the round of 32, really. Live and learn, but maybe don't give your manager a 4-year contract extension if he's going to just stink it up at the World Cup. As for Brazil, well, what did you expect? These guys are just a step above the Scottish squad, simple as. Neymar came on and created a few chances, but nothing in the scoreline. Vinny Jr. is really starting to show up for the national team, which I think is a good thing, and Endrick is still not being started in the starting 11. Definitely a shame that we didn't get the alien invasion that one psychic promised, though. Maybe the Scots would have played better with Sleeve Clark being beamed up and kidnapped or something. Moving on to Group A, we had Mexico 3, Czechia 0. Now, it was already a pretty dead rubber game to start off with, but Mexico just kind of put the game to bed. 3-0, Memo Ochoa coming on and keeping a clean sheet for his last ever international game at the Estadio Azteca, no less. Goals from Chavez, Quiñones, and Fidalgo. 9 points in the group. It's got to be a great day to be a Mexican, surely. Whereas the Czech side didn't really generate too many chances, ending up bottom of the group with 1 point. And now we've even gotten news that Patrick Schick is retiring. Yeah, it's not a great look for this side. And one thing I saw on Twitter were Irish people wondering how the hell they lost to this side, and what they, the Irish, may have been able to do in place of the Czechs at the World Cup. Regardless, Mexico is the first host country to qualify top of their group, and I'm pretty confident it won't be the last, if you know what I'm saying. And now they get to continue to play at the Estadio Azteca for the round of 32, regardless of whoever it is they might be going up against. And as for the other match in Group A, we had South Africa 1, South Korea 0. Fair play to South Korea, man. A disastrous opening game against Mexico where Sitole gave away the ball for the first goal and then got sent off later. Well, look who it is again. A true redemption arc for Sitole, who's got a 7.5 rating here on FOTMob, and it might even be higher on other sites. But South Africa really said, no Mo Koena, no problem, as it was Maseko who stepped in and scored what would turn out to be the game-winning goal for South Africa. And now South Africa are going to the knockouts for the first time ever, while South Korea, despite having had a few half chances in the game, are knocked down to third in the group on 3 points, which is bad for Scotland, for those of you keeping track. The dangers of hubris, am I right? The idea that a draw would be enough, only to not be able to respond properly after Maseko's goal. They'll probably still qualify, but they'll likely have to face a tougher opponent now, and they might not be able to play in LA where there's so many, where there's such a large Korean diaspora. And we start this match day, as of recording this, on Ivory Coast 2, Curacao 0. This was kind of always the expected result, wasn't it? Maybe people would have expected a higher score for Ivory Coast, more goals, but it gets the job done. And valiant defending from Curacao as well, for what it's worth. I didn't watch the match, but I think it's safe to say that the Curacao national team has done their people very, very proud. If we get Curaçaoan wonder kids popping up in the Eredivisie a few years down the line, this World Cup campaign will be what they mention as having inspired them to get into football. And as for Ivory Coast, it's another 3 points thanks to the Nicolas Pepe brace, and they go through comfortably to the knockouts on 6 points. And as for the last match I'm going to cover today, Ecuador 2, Germany 1. Now, the first question I want to ask is, where the hell was this Ecuador against Curacao? How has Ecuador managed to win against Germany, but drawing or even losing against the other two lesser sides in the group? I saw a comment a while ago that's probably true at this point. Ecuador can draw with England, and they can probably also draw with St. Kitts and Nevis. It's just such an unpredictable team that can be utterly unplayable on their day, and then you get days like 0-0 against Curacao. As for Germany, is this really doom and gloom? Nah. It is doom and gloom, however, for Scotland, since we've now got yet another team in the third place table with more points than them. Since if we look at this, Ecuador is on third place with 4 points. Again, fair play to Ecuador for pulling this off. Them and South Africa, they clearly showed the desire to make it to the next round, which Scotland hadn't done. Fair play to them. But now, let's take a look at the knockout brackets and see where we might be going for the round of 32 matches. And here we have the confirmed knockout bracket for the World Cup 2026. And we've already got the top 2 teams from each of the groups, from groups A to E already inserted here, and we've also got Group F currently finishing up, but I don't want to include them into here yet because those are still going. We could get like a 95th minute goal or something like that. So everything could change still, and I don't want to include them into this just yet. But we do have all of the top 2 teams from groups A to E, and we already have a confirmed matchup. We have Canada going up against South Africa in LA on the 29th of June. Now, at the point of Switzerland beating Canada, I said that this was a bad thing that Canada would have to play in LA, because at that point they would be projected to play against Korea, and of course LA has a large diaspora of Koreans, so this would effectively be like a home match. But because South Africa beat South Korea, they actually leapfrogged. Is that the right word? Leapfrog? I don't know. Leapfrogged South Korea to get into second place in the groups, which means we now have second place in Group A versus second place in Group B playing against each other, which in this case is Canada versus South Africa, and that is our first 100% confirmed matchup in the round of 32. I think both of those teams will be liking their chances, but especially Canada. I think Canada can defend well against South Africa, and it would mark Canada's first win in a knockout, I believe, at the World Cup, which is actually quite remarkable. And they'll be making it into the round of 32, which, if you look at the results, I think they are very likely to face off against either Morocco or, ironically, just as it's going on right now, the Netherlands. There are others as well. I'm not entirely sure who Germany is going to face. It says 3AB here, which means that it would be the third place of Group A or the third place of Group B, which would be either Korea and Bosnia, but this also doesn't show all of the possible permutations, so let's not go too deep into it. Right now, the projected most likely team to play against the USA is actually Bosnia, so that could be interesting. For Brazil, we would get the second place in Group F, which I believe, if the current results in Group F hold, that's Japan, and Brazil versus Japan is going to be an incredible matchup. For the Ivory Coast, they would face second in Group I, which right now, as of everything being projected, is most likely to be Norway. So Norway versus Ivory Coast, that's going to be crazy. Mexico, they're off to face. Mexico are likely to face 3C or 3E, which means third place in Group C or third place in Group E. Right now that's Scotland, but obviously things still can change and will change. And for there's a lot of these. I'm not going to go through every single one, but we can look at the as it stands table on FODMOB over here. And I've already gone through some of these matches. We've got Netherlands playing Morocco. We've got this is already confirmed, Brazil versus Japan, Ivory Coast versus Norway. This is probably not going to happen, Argentina versus Uruguay, because Uruguay is currently second in Group H, but after the last match day, what is very likely to happen is that Uruguay will lose to Spain, and then Cape Verde will beat Saudi Arabia, which would put Cape Verde into second, and that means that, yes, Argentina is very likely to play Cape Verde in the first ever knockout match for Cape Verde. They're just not making it easy for themselves, are they? So yeah, we've got some other banger matches as well here. Although not all of these are confirmed, but Austria playing Spain, that is another one that is likely to happen. But we just have to see what happens. We could get strange results like we had, Ecuador beat Germany on the last day of the match days. We'll just have to see what happens, but as it stands, this is what the bracket would look like, although I'm sure that the Uruguay one is going to change. Scotland will definitely change, and somewhere in this equation, you can also include Senegal because they will be playing against Iraq, which is a game that they're strongly favored to win. And yeah, that is gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my recap of Matchday 2 and Matchday 3 so far. You can catch me on more live watch along live streams where I'm definitely going to be doing a watch along for Cape Verde versus Saudi Arabia. I might do other matches as well. We'll see what happens. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like this video if you did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my upcoming content, including live watch alongs and more breakdown and coverage of football results from this World Cup itself. And I'll see you next time.